Welcome to Therapy Sessions Cutting Toxic Family Ties. My name is Dr. Sherry Campbell, and I'm your host. I am a leading expert in the niche of toxic family abuse, and although my show cannot substitute for therapy, it is a survivor-based show. In me, you're not only going to get an expert, but you're also going to get a survivor, as I have also survived toxic family abuse. I know how hard it is. The goal I have is to give voice to the voiceless, to provide skills to help you to protect your peace, to stand your solid ground, and to navigate and heal the heartbreaks caused by toxic family. Please have a pen and paper available to give voice to your thoughts as you listen to each show. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your bravery. So let the healing begin. Welcome, everyone, to Therapy Sessions Cutting Toxic Family Ties. These will be going on and off all throughout the show. So welcome to my glasses as well, Amazon. And I am here with a really wonderful, smart woman that we met online. And I think the one thing we share in common outside of this narcissistic space is just humor. We have to be funny. We have to laugh. We have to see some of this stuff for the humor that it is. And so I think that was just something that I noticed a kind of a click between us, which is nice. And we'll talk about that. But Chantal's basically, and I'm going to let you explain what you do, but she works in the area of divorce, parent alienation, narcissistic ex, and family court. And it's such an ugly, corrupt space. I've been there. I know you've been there. I have many patients that have been there, many friends that have been there. To me, it does not seem like things are getting any better at all. And this space needs to get cleaned up. It's really just a money-making scheme for the lawyers. And then we essentially feels like we lose custody to our kids to a judge, and they don't care about pathology. They don't care about anything but assets, 50-50 timeshare. They don't care what's happening to the children. And these are the lost souls. And then we have totally de-empowered or disempowered parents handing help over to these people, and they're not getting help. They're losing more and more of their kids. So Chantal, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do. And then we're going to dive into this very important topic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sherry, for having me on. I'm Chantal Contorines, and I am, the alliteration kills me. I love alliteration. I'm a coercive control parenting coach. And so I work with survivors who share children with their abusers. And as you highlighted, the system simply does not support survivors, be they adults or children. And the system really seems to empower, enable, and embolden abusers to continuously abuse. And I just got off a session in my membership, and we were just talking about that. We just had a client who had to go through the court system this week, and it was so obvious to anybody who knows anything about power dynamics and abuse what was going on. And obviously, it did not go in their favor. And again, it was in the child's best interest what this parent was fighting for. And the courts just totally dismissed it. So the system is rigged against survivors. And it's rigged against survivors, as you said, because it is a money-making machine. And third parties, GALs, parenting coordinators, even co-parenting therapists, I would like to say and give them the benefit of the doubt and think that they simply just don't know. They don't understand coercive control. They don't understand abuse. They don't understand narcissistic personality disorders. But I also think they benefit from the conflict that is created in the family court system. And I see it time and time again. We were just talking today, and somebody asked, in all your time working with protective parents, how many third parties have you seen be helpful for survivors? And I said, one person.
The statistics on that are nauseating.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen this parenting coordinator thing in several different cases to come through my office. They will even advertise as educated in narcissism.
Oh.
But they're not. And they have the power of decision, big decisions over like if they should go to this school or how much timeshare or whatever. In one case, he doesn't want to pay for private school. He doesn't want to do any drop off and pickups because he knows for her to do that is difficult. But at the same time, he's asking for more parenting time. So dropping off and picking up is parenting time. You won't do it. You won't pay for half of anything, but you want more parenting time. And all the coordinator did was say, so I'm confused. I don't even know if she went there. I'll reframe. I think she said something like, so you're saying that you don't want to help financially and you don't want to do any drop off and pickups, but you want 50% custody. And he said, yes. And she goes,
Yeah. And make it make sense. That makes his behavior, what he was saying, shows the opposite of what he's saying. He only wants 50% custody as a source of more power and control over both his ex as well as his child. He doesn't actually want the child. He doesn't want what's in the child's best interest. He doesn't actually want to parent the child. He just wants to probably pay less support and also have more control.
yeah, because you're saying you want to do the least amount, but you still want what you want. Like it just makes no sense whatsoever. And I've watched at least 3 women go through this, and I've watched one man. It is not just men that are abusers. In fact, the scariest person to walk through my office was female.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a way of manipulating the law, attorneys. It was so savvy. It was just unbelievable. And he ended up giving up custody because anytime that he had a drop off or pick up, the police were called. And he at that point was like, and he had no more money. He'd already spent $140,000 on this attorney. And for him, that's an extraordinary amount of money.
For anybody, really, that's an extraordinary amount of money.
Right.
That's your child's education.
Even if you're rich, that's a lot of money, right? So there's like this no-win situation that's going on. And I really appreciate that you talked about these third parties because we need these divorce coordinators. So what power do you have in the court system, or is your power in helping the person to navigate all of these third parties and their attorneys? Explain what your role is.
So my role is outside because I truly don't believe that there's justice ever served in court. And so I always urge my clients, my members, my followers, my listeners to try as much as possible to stay out of the legal system. Because it's one other way that your ex will weaponize you and continue to abuse you, because it's legal abuse. It's filing motion after motion. It's not complying with court orders. It's forcing you to go back to court. This is not only time, but it's also a lot of money. And it's emotional abuse, and it's mental abuse and psychological abuse. And as we know, the prolonged stress also causes physical ailments. So it's also physical abuse. So my work is helping protective parents, as I call them, learn to parent outside of the system, learn to create boundaries with their ex. And if they have to go to court, they have to go to court. Sometimes you just can't avoid that. But it's protecting yourself, protecting your children in ways that you can parent without using intervention of the court. Because even a lot of therapists claim to know what they're talking about when it comes to this, but they don't. And these people are con artists. So it's very easy to con people. They can be very charming and very caring and very engaged. And then behind the scenes, they're incredibly abusive and manipulative and vindictive. And so therapists, God bless them, even if they mean well and they have good intentions, they're bamboozled, as most people are. So it takes a very educated therapist who actually understands what abuse truly looks like and how abusers present and how it presents in children too. We assume that children who are raised by abusers don't want to go to these abusers and they want to be with their safe, protective parent. But the longer a child has to live with this type of person, the more they've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to believe their side of the story. And also they align with them to seek safety. So a child who's 6 typically is very aware and can say, hey, you know what? Mommy or daddy is not safe and I don't want to go to them. But the longer the 6-year-old has to live with this abuser, the more likely they are to align with them to secure safety by any means necessary, because they see that as their only source of safety. No one's coming to save them. And so if you talk to that same 14-year-old, they're like, no, I love my mom and my dad. They're totally safe. So their narrative has changed. So my work is helping protective parents navigate that. And the go-to of most abusers is turning children against protective, engaged, loving parents. It's the most painful thing.
Yep. Yep. Luckily, I'm one of those therapists that's highly educated in
Yes.
this area.
And
So
we need more of you. We need more of you, honestly.
I do a lot of the same work that you do if I'm dealing in a divorce. What I find is, well, hands down, and I was talking to Kristen Cavallari about this, is that in a divorce, children will always side with the most abusive parent and go against the parent who's trying to protect them, not because there's any love difference, but out of fear. One, they don't want to be abandoned by that parent. That is still their parent. They are too young to understand. There's all this manipulation going on. And they have this sort of unconditional trust that the good parent's going to stay there no matter what.
Yeah.
But the torture that I see the good parent going through, the intensity of the powerlessness and the tears, and then the inability to protect your child, and you've tried every legal way to do so, and then you are unable to make that real, and they are seemingly getting more and more of what they want from the abuser, and then they're losing their children more and more and more. And so I find that protecting their parenting time is important. I mean, these sociopaths will blow you up on the phone. They'll try to FaceTime 60 times a day. And there's so much fear that if you don't allow it to happen, that something worse is going to happen either to you or your kid. That to get the surviving parent or the survivor parent to really step into those boundaries is so hard. And I don't think they need to be perfect. I think they need to make it a process. They don't always need to use their words, because words then,
Yep.
you're disrupting my parent. There's all these apps, My Family Wizard, which we were forced to be on. And I noticed that he only used that if he wanted to get me, but he'd text otherwise. And I'm like, I can save both. Like, I don't know why you're so dumb, but I can save both. But I do think there's so much fear of consequence in setting the boundaries, just like it would be for me to my toxic mother, or anyone who's really pathological, right? But you don't have children with your toxic mother. It's a different situation. My daughter had to follow the law for 14 years. And unfortunately, I married my mother, and she chose by her own volition that she was not going to have a relationship with him. He was an incredibly low effort father. And then just, if she'd cry when she'd leave my house, he'd be like, why don't you cry when you leave mine? Why does your mom have heart emoji on her phone, my number on the phone, and I don't? And he'd open her phone and change it.
Yeah. It's all these micro cuts. That is inappropriate for any parent to do. And it places a child in the middle, and it creates a loyalty bind for your child. But your child just felt safer with you. And your child knew this transition was hard. Why? Because they were going from a parent who was actually a safe parent, a protective parent, into an unsafe, unstable, inhospitable environment. And that wreaks havoc on their little nervous systems. So typically transitions are really hard, the going and the coming back. Every time
Yeah.
our children come back, depending on how their parent has been, you can see massive dysregulation. You can see that they're in fight mode. This wears on a protective parent, which is why I always tell people you really have to take such good care of yourself. And you have to invest in yourself, both the knowledge and the education, as well as your own self-care. And I'm not talking bubble baths, although if that's your jam, please bubble bath it up. But real self-care, therapy, coaching, community, education, and downtime, right? Rest is productive. These people are exhausting on every level. And so when you don't have your children, when you are able to rest, cocoon, sleep, your body needs to recalibrate and just relax, because abuse doesn't end because a relationship ends. If you have children, it just morphs into post-separation abuse, and they will always use your children. It's the easiest way to control and hurt a protective parent is by hurting the child, and trying to turn a child against them, or just involving them and weaponizing them. And then they come back and you're being abused by proxy by your own children. And they oftentimes mimic your ex in their mannerisms or their speech patterns. This is all exhausting.
It's exhausting and very difficult not to be afraid of and not to take personal. I've seen that situation with every protective parent I've treated, which has been many over the last 30 years. But It is so painful. I mean, I find that self-care for them almost when the phase is so traumatic and they're literally dissociating, they cannot sleep, they cannot eat. At that point, which I rarely ever do, but I will actually recommend temporarily either getting on a psychological medication just to help, like Alexa Pro to help ease that anxiety and the depression, maybe help some sleep. And they don't have to stay on it. If it calms down, they can get off. But I've seen it get so severe to a level of hopelessness that this person is running red lights. They're dissociated because they can't even get to self-care. It's so traumatic.
Yeah. And they're stuck in survival. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that's the thing is this is exhausting on every level. And I agree with you. I don't typically like medication long term, but sometimes you just need that. You need that extra help, that support to get out of the not sleeping. Not sleeping is so torturous. Like literally, it's a form of torture.
Mhm.
And stress impacts your ability to sleep. Cortisol spikes, right? So lack of sleep is a very common side effect of abuse.
Yeah, I always tell my patients dopamine will block out melatonin. So if you get triggered an hour before bed, you're 3 hours before your chemicals are going to come down. And, I think that, again, I too am not, I think meds should be your last effort. But there are times when it's so bad that just to be present for your kid, that you have to be able to do that. And there's a lot of abuse that does come home. Chantal, what got you into this? Is this something, obviously, it's something you've lived? So tell us a little bit of your story.
So I was partnered for 25 years from 14 to 39. And I left I know it was very young. And I look at that, my daughter is 14. And I came from a very good house. My parents, I have a psychologist for a dad and a teacher for a mom, and parents who still text me every day and tell me that they love me. I didn't understand that abuse could happen to people who came from healthy homes. I thought it was only people who came from abusive homes. I also didn't understand that abuse can be very covert, that you never have to raise your voice or raise a hand for it to be abusive. That knowledge has come recently, far more recent years. And so that was my story. And I left when I was 39 and I didn't understand what I had been dealing with. And I only started to understand about a year out. And it was actually talking to a friend, and I connected the dots. And then I did deep dive after deep dive. And then I had hired a divorce coach to help me, and he was life changing. And I was like, I was at a crossroads. I'd been a teacher for 22 years, 20 years at this point, and I love children. I love helping people. This just seemed to be like a natural progression for me to take my educator cap and pivot to help protective parents help their children. Um, and I firmly believe that the whole worldwide legal system needs to change, needs an overhaul. I think it's a pay to play. You have the money, you can abuse the system. And also we forget that they have no issue lying. And they typically hire lawyers who have no issue lying and bending the truth and doing things that are illegal. Whereas honest people are honest, and they would never think to lie in court, and they would typically never hire a lawyer who lies as well. So the odds are stacked against survivors. Versus their abusers, because abusers lie all the time. They believe their own lies and they have no issue. It's just another tool to be used. So this is the work that I do, and I'm incredibly passionate about it. I've been doing it now for, I think, 5 years. And I just want to give every one of my clients hugs, and I just want to tell them it's going to be okay. And we see, like today in my membership, there's a lot of grief. There's been a lot of heavy things happening this week with some of our members. And so we just sat with the grief and allowed these beautiful people to just sit in the injustice and unfairness of what they've experienced, and ultimately what their children have to experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covert abuse, at least in my own life with my mother, who was very covert. My father was overtly violent, emotionally, physically. But when it's covert, you can't prove it. So you can't even prove it to yourself. So you will automatically doubt your own perspective on reality. And I think it's much harder to recover from that, right? I think it's
Yeah. I
because you
absolutely
can't prove
agree.
a
Yeah.
tone voice, you can't prove a look on their face, you can't prove the narcissistic stare. You can't do any of that. Lying, like you said, is very commonplace with a narcissist. And you have to get to a point, I think, is where you have to stop trying to stop the lies or to prove the lies. You're never going to prove it. You need to stick to your truth and just stick to the facts of what you know. And I've always said to my patients in this position, you have to run the conversations like a business.
Yeah.
Get through your reaction, find your bottom line. What are your 3 bullet points? Put it on My Family Wizard, not because they're going to do anything with it,
Yep.
but because you have it and you can show you're not taking bait. You're not going to argue. It's so
You're not part
hard.
of the problem.
You're not part of the problem. Sticking to the facts and getting more in a business mind is better. And it doesn't change your abuser, but it does take some steam out of their ability. Because the more you take their bait, the more you communicate back, the more the story just rolls and rolls and rolls, and you're not going to win.
No, and it's always less is more with them. The less information you give them, the better off you'll always be. Anything you give them can and will be used against you. Might not be right now,
Mhm.
might be in a month from now, but literally is like an interrogation. They're listening to all the things you're saying or not saying, all the emotions. If you're happy, they're going to weaponize your happiness. If you're sad, they're going to like, oh, I'm going to do more of that to elicit more of that reaction from them. So literally everything you say can and will be used against you. Keep all emotions out of all communication. It's business. It's straight facts. It's unemotional, not reactive, and responsive. And remember, just because they text you or email you or app you doesn't mean you have to respond. You only ever
Mhm.
have to respond to children issues that involve your children. And even then, if it's not an emergency, you do not have to answer right now. That's your boundary, right? You create your boundary when you're going to respond to your ex if it's not an emergency. And you recondition yourself to not be as triggered. And when you
And available.
yeah. And because you are a source of supply for them. So you're also reconditioning them to not seek you out as a source of supply. And it
Mhm.
also lessens, if you can press pause and then help to regulate yourself and actually read the message again and go, okay, what do I actually need to respond to? Tease out what's actually the thing. All the accusations they've lobbed at you. The only question you need to answer is what time are you picking up the children? Right? You
Mhm.
avoid all the other stuff. You don't jade. You don't justify, argue, defend, or explain yourself. And you keep it very brief, informative, friendly, and firm. I will be picking the kids up as usual at 4:30. I'll see you then. In and out.
Do those acronyms again slowly so maybe the listeners can write them down because they went really fast. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, those are good.
Yeah. So
It's
jade.
Jade.
Jade is you never justify, argue, defend, or explain yourself. Right? They want you to engage. For them, this back and forth conversation that's circular in nature that never ends is fuel for them. Whereas you will leave this an hour later without any resolution and exhausted on every level. Right? So you don't have to justify. Just because they call you a terrible parent doesn't mean you have to justify why you made this choice or argue or defend yourself or explain yourself. That's their opinion of you. Doesn't mean that's the reality. Then it's diff. So you keep all your messages, all your communication to brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Friendly doesn't mean you're like, hey, how are you doing? So great to see
Like,
you.
don't call me. Yeah, we're not doing that.
It just means you're cordial. And the other thing that I always tell my clients and my members is you don't have to press send right away. If you wouldn't feel comfortable reading this in front of a judge, then don't
Listen,
send, right? Send it to your
listen.
bestie, send it to me if you want me to vet it, just so you can put it in your journal. Everything needs to be unemotional. And this is part of the fear. You talked earlier about the fear that protective parents feel, and it's the fear
Mhm.
of having to go to court because the court system is so rigged against survivors and protective parents that it's very easy to be considered part of the problem. And the legal system doesn't see it as a one party conflict. Most of the time, sometimes there might be two-party conflict, but most of the time it's one person who's the high conflict person, and the other person is merely responding to the high conflict. So it's not two-party conflict, it's one person creates the conflict, but they don't see this. So if you're texting back, if you're emailing and you're emotional and you're reactive and you're name calling back and you're saying, you don't make any, right? You're part of the problem. They don't understand that you're being abused, that you're reacting to this abuse, that it's the straw that broke the camel's back, which is what they would love. They'd love to bait you into looking crazy. So keep it less, keep it more. Do not engage if you don't need to. Create firm boundaries around your time, when you're going to open up their messages, how you're going to respond, and when you're going to respond. Just because they say jump doesn't mean you have to say how high. They've conditioned you to. Because in your relationship, if you didn't respond to their phone call ASAP or their text ASAP, you would face their wrath. Now is your time to recondition yourself and also recondition them to not expect supply from you.
Yeah. And I think doing that is so hard because these are the things that I've seen in the divorces, the things that these parents do. They plan overnights with friends on your custodial time without asking you.
Mm.
And
Yep.
now you're the bad guy if you ruin the overnights. Yet, if you were to plan something on their custodial time, shit hits the fan, right? They make a big deal over vacations and whatnot. They want to go whenever they want, but they hog tie you to not be able to go.
The
They
rules don't apply to them. The rules don't apply
uh-huh,
to only you.
that's right. They blow you up on phone or FaceTime when you're with your kid, totally disrupting your parenting time. Yet if you try and call them FaceTime, your kids suddenly they're busy, they're never available. You
Aliens
can't see your
landed,
kids.
Wi-Fi. Or
Oh, aliens landed, right? Or they have agreed on something in a stipulation around payment and money, and then they signed it, and then they'll say, "Well, I don't really understand," and that's
Mhm.
not what my lawyer said. And it's written in black and white. You
Yeah.
can literally take a picture of that part of the stip, and they'll go, "I don't get it."
Yeah.
So it's everything to keep the conflict rolling. And then they position you when you start reacting because you're like, it's very black and white. My custodial time is not for free. Don't plan things for our child on my custodial time. Whatever you want on your custodial time.
Yep.
When they come back at that, I tell my clients, say nothing more. If you've already said, look at what you said. Did you say everything you needed to say? If you did, tap out or repeat the same sentence over and over and over.
Yeah, but
Do not,
asked and answered. I've already asked, I've already answered. They want to
you
keep the
can do that.
conversation
Yep.
going, right? But
But
you
if you keep one, they wear out. I did this with my ex husband. I would just repeat.
yeah.
It might last 2 or 3 times. Like, let's do the custodial time thing. Do not plan my custodial time without my permission. Blah, 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 blah. And I'd copy and paste.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And I'd copy and paste. And then he'd be like, "Oh, you're such an whatever I
Yeah.
am to him." And I was like, "Okay." And what that did for me, honestly, is that me just copying and pasting, it just made him look more crazy. And then finally, I had some evidence that it wasn't just me reacting, or like you said,
Yeah.
asked and answered,
Yeah.
right? However you want to do it, but they are
You
going to
you
do
take
everything
away
they
their
can.
fuel. You take away their fuel. You extinguish their
That's right.
fire by not continuing to add fuel to their fire, right?
That's right.
Like the
I've
copy and
told
paste is
patients
genius.
too. Yeah, I've told patients too, block them
Mhm.
temporarily.
Yep.
If they're going to go on a rant, why feed it to yourself? Don't do just believe me.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there that's going to be so critically important that's going to land you in court tomorrow.
Yeah.
You'll figure out like just block them, let that storm pass, and then a few hours
Yep.
later open it back up, but don't respond,
Yeah.
right?
You
And they
don't
get
have to
afraid
respond.
because they'll say, "Oh, what a good parent you are. You're not responding." I mean,
Mhm.
they
Yep.
will.
Or they're threatened. If you don't respond to me, I'm going to bring you to court. And that's every protective parent's worst nightmare. A, because it's financially draining and taxing, but also because you know that your chances of actually coming out on the positive in any legal setting is not in your favor. The odds are not in your
Mhm.
favor. They're really stacked against you. And so this causes a stress. But just because they threaten, you know your ex better than anybody else. So is this what they typically do? I have some clients whose exes, file motion after motion. This is their way.
Right,
This is
those two.
right.
Mhm.
This is how they get their source of supply. And unfortunately, they do become emboldened by the court system because they typically do win, even though it's so obvious to you and me what's going on behind the scenes. For whatever reason, it's not evident in the court setting. Um, so you really have to say, okay, is my ex actually going to do this? Or is this just, an empty threat? And then proceed accordingly. And you have to retrain yourself just because they're asking for something. And like an emergency on their part does not constitute an emergency on your part. So just
Mhm.
because they're demanding something doesn't mean you actually have to procure that at this particular moment. It can be tomorrow, it can be 3 days from now. Obviously, follow your parenting order, your court order. Do understand those parameters. We have to abide by the law. And this is the exhausting part, is that we abide by the law and they constantly, shirk the law. ignore the law. The laws and the rules don't apply to them. They're above laws. Don't you know who they think they are? Whereas the protective parent actually reads their order and goes, okay, well, I actually have to respond within 24 hours or so on and so forth. So we abide by the rules and they don't. At the end of the day, you're keeping your side of the street clean. They're mucking. You may not win the court battles. You may not, but you're going to win the war. And the war is really to protect yourself and your children. And even if that means that you lose custody of your child, and that can be through the legal system, or that can be that they are so entrenched in poisoning your children against you. And this happens for two reasons. Sometimes children don't want to go to abusive parents. So that's actually child-led. But more often than not, it's parents who are brainwashing and indoctrinating children to fear their other parent. And children don't love this parent less, but they understand that and as you said, and I say this all the time, they know that you love them unconditionally, that they can treat you like shit and you will still say, I love you. Right? You will still say, I love you, and you will come down to their level. And they do not have that same sense of security with their other parent. They know if they do not, acquiesce and submit to this other parent, they will lose this parent. They will face their wrath. And that might be, being shunned by them. And for a child, that is death. Right? So they will work harder for this parent. And it makes no sense. Parents are like, I don't understand. I'm a safe parent. And my child, why are they choosing? You have to even reframe that. Your child is not choosing. When there's coercion in the mix, choices goes out the door. Your child is no longer choosing. They're simply reacting to fear. It's fear-based. There is no choice.
They have to absorb it. I remember going to my dad's house as a little girl, and I was so scared of him because he was
a monster. He was a monster.
Road rage. I saw him bloody people in front of me. He was such a rageaholic that if I'd go there and I would absorb, and then I
make
would
yourself as small as humanly possible,
and wait for cues of when he was very Jekyll Hyde. So I would wait for cues of when I could enjoy him or not. Most of the time, not. But I think that there's a whole host of things that really go against the supporting parent, protective parent, in that you just don't have any control. When they come back, I used to give London, it took her 24 hours at a minimum to detox. She had a very covert, low effort, neglectful, passive aggressive, guilting, victim-y father. And it would take her, and he would just put so much pressure on her to make him feel good.
Yeah.
And I would just let her, I'd watch her she needed to go be alone because I think he hovers so much when he's there, but he was addicted to video games still to this day and would neglect her for hours and be 2 a.m. He never fed her dinner. And he'd throw her a frozen, what are those peanut butter and jelly frozen? What
oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I know what you're saying.
Throw her one of those. It's ice.
Yes.
So yeah, she wanted to come home. And I know that he knew but he didn't care, so
they do not care. And this is the hard reality.
He cares about what he gets, not what she gets. She had to be very performative. And I just thought, let her. If performing is going to keep her safe, then perform away. Other children come home and to say to their parents, you're a liar, you're this, you're that. And you know where they're getting it. And I say to my parents, look at it like vomit.
They have to get it out of their system.
They feel safe enough to vomit in front of you, all over you. And you have to sort of take these offline, which is hard, but give your kid 24 to 48 hours and that won't be there anymore. Right. So one thing I find fascinating, and I definitely want to talk about this, is I've had now 3 patients sign with attorneys, sign with parenting coordinators, and suddenly, without their knowledge or permission, their children have their own fucking lawyer that they have to pay for. And one of my patients, her son at the time was 6, and he was programmed to say, I want more time with my dad. So she suggested it. And my patient was like, I did not know. My lawyer didn't let me know my child was going to have their own lawyer. What
Yep.
6-year-old? It's insane to me. How does that happen? How do these child lawyers now have a whole booming career destroying families?
You just said it. It's a career. And this is big money. I believe the stats are it's like billions of dollars. The family court system is $1 billion industry, more than $1 billion. And that's just in the States. This is not just a US, Canada issue. This is literally, because I have clients all over the world, and it's a worldwide family court crisis because, and this is what is so incomprehensible to so many people, is how does it happen? And how do these people sleep at night? I couldn't even imagine doing this to families, doing this to children, and being able to sleep, let alone be paid.
Well, and
But
these child lawyers don't even need to show up to court. They write a little letter.
yep, and that's literally their word is gospel. So once they pipe up, and they've oftentimes been paid off, or they play golf with the opposing attorney, and they're part of some sort of club. And then the judges, it's the same thing. There's so much collusion. There's so much bias in court, and you think that you're going to seek justice. That justice, it's obvious, and we tell survivors all the time: if you are in an abusive relationship and you have children, you have to leave. And then people leave, and there's literally no support for them. There's nothing. There's nothing. And not only is there nothing to support them, but the system actually works actively against them. Like I said, I've had one client out of hundreds, 500-600 people who've actually had a positive outcome by hiring a third-party professional to advocate for their children. Again, something that she didn't want. It was court ordered. Thankfully for her, this person was able to see clearly through the chaos and confusion. And these people are very adept at manipulating systems, and they create so much chaos and confusion. They throw so much dirt, hoping that something sticks, that people just don't want to bother having to try to sift through it. Time is money, time is effort. Judges don't have time. They don't care. They want to go on to the next case on their docket. And lawyers, this is funding their children's private school education and their 3-week vacation at Maui at the Ritz. You have people, I think, who have good hearts, but you also have a lot of people who have dehumanized people and don't see them as humans and don't actually look at what this really means. My actions or lack thereof are impacting not only this protective parent indefinitely and trauma and re-traumatizing them, but also it's impacting this vulnerable child who I'm actually responsible for. When you actually start thinking about how your actions or lack thereof impact people, you actually have to stop what you're doing if you have a conscience. And
If you have a conscience.
yeah.
I do think the money, because the whole goal out here in California is to keep it away from the judge, settle it out with the attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Mediation's a joke,
Yep.
right? That never works. And then I find that even once the stipulation is made and they say it's ironclad, the next thing you know, you're being brought into court
Yep.
again. The attorneys, I don't know how they live with themselves, especially a child attorney that was never asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're forced to pay for that attorney. And I don't know, I mean, what is being done? Is there anything being done about the structure? I mean, there's divorce coordinators now, but that's outside the court.
There are groups who are,
Movements?
there are movements. There's a whole, the thing is that judges have impunity, and
It's like playing your
right. And they make these rulings without any knowledge or education. They truly don't understand. And I oftentimes think that a lot of people in this profession, both lawyers as well as judges, are this type of personality as well. They do say, the legal
That's
profession.
fair. I think that makes total sense.
Right?
I've seen it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So-
narcissistic, just your partner.
Right. And so this is not that it's a gendered thing, but this is like a boys' club, like an old boys' club, right? And so predators protect other predators.
Mhm.
And so if the judge is narcissistic and your ex is narcissistic, they're going to collude with your ex, even if your ex hasn't asked them to, because they're cheering for this abuser. They are. And so this is how it happens. There are organizations that are grassroots that are gaining momentum, trying to change laws to make it so that it's public, so that there isn't the secrecy around what goes on. And people simply do not understand. most people in society, thankfully, don't understand because they've never experienced this themselves, how very biased and how very scary this whole process is, right? If you have a child who doesn't want to go back to their abuser because they're being abused, this abuser can then go to court and ask them to go to reunification camps. And those are so traumatic, right? It's
I've
3.
had 2 of those. Yeah, I've had 2. It wasn't a camp, but the father had an affair with their babysitter,
Yeah.
who was only 5 years older than his oldest daughter,
Oh, that makes sense.
and the child of one of his best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So he says to me that I'm a horrible therapist because I had him in my office with his kids, and one of the kids sat next to me in a chair, and he was there, and she went like this for 45 minutes. I'm like, I don't know what kind of magic juice you think I have that could force people to talk. I got you in here. She
Mhm.
didn't even want this.
Yep.
But so he threatened to sue me and all kinds of other fun, juicy things. So then she stayed with me for a long time, and we got her really, really solid. She's no contact this day. He drug her through reunification therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this therapist, kind of like your one client,
Mm-hmm.
was phenomenal. And he had my clients back. And he said, I
And
don't know
that's
who
a
you,
rarity, right? And that's
it's
a
a
rarity.
rarity.
Yep.
But he said, I don't know who your therapist is, but she's got you totally prepared. And he said to this dad, when you cheat on your wife, you cheat on your kids.
Yeah.
So that's so rare. Out here, they'll do something called a 730 evaluation. It's $12,000. And you will take the MMPI, which is a 4-hour personality test. The kids have to go through psych testing. Your partner has to go through psych testing. I think it's very hard on the children.
Of course.
And even when you get it, that they tap out as a 2-9 full-blown narcissism, they don't get less custodial time. They just make them have a parenting coordinator.
Yeah.
Or go to therapy. Well, guess what? The real client never gets treated.
Yeah.
Hands down, I treat only healthy people who have a desire to understand how to deal with the unhealthy people in their lives. They might come in as long as, because they always come in as a couple. They don't come in by themselves. And they're great as long as it's all about their partner, what a shitty partner you have, blah, blah, blah. The second it turns on them, I'm being ganged up on, I'm out of here, you're a shitty therapist, and out they go.
Yeah.
So
And they never want to come back. And
they never want to come back, and they will never come back. They might therapist hop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they can prove that they're woke, and they can prove that they're, really trying to, to be a loving human, but it's all manipulation. No truly pathological person seeks help. A narcissist will never seek help. Maybe there's 0.001% of the population who actually will truly go to therapy and truly, I don't even believe that.
I don't think so. I think that they may have a lot of toxic traits, or they may have some heavily endowed narcissistic traits.
Mm-hmm.
But if they go to therapy, they cannot be narcissistic because they have too much self-insight to do that. So, but they could have, instead of 5 of 9, they could have 4 of 9. But if they have something that allows them to look within, then they can. I worked with a guy 3 times a week who had many mild traits of narcissism, but he would sob over it. He hated the reflection of himself. So we came 3 times a week for 3 years, and we worked it out. So I even never diagnosed him narcissistic because yes, he had some really problematic behaviors from his childhood. They were all fear-based, but I could get in.
Yeah. And you can't get in with the narcissist because they literally,
you cannot get in. It's like deflect.
Yeah, they avoid reality at all costs. They would rather burn bridges, dump you, move on, than have to face the reality of who they are. Which is also why I'm so hesitant to believe the self-proclaimed narcissists that are in this space, who claim to have been healed. And I'm like, I want to believe you, but I also have a hard time believing that you are healed.
Yeah, I pay no attention to them. There's only one, and I actually will not mention his name. I can tell you in private, but that I do think is authentic because he writes a ton of books. And he absolutely knows that he's a raging sociopath. And he started writing as a therapy because he was forced into the therapy. And he manipulates his therapist every day. But I'll tell you that one of his books, which I was angry, I even read it at the time. But had I not read it, he basically says, I'm a narcissist, and those who think that my kind of me don't know that we are narcissists have been fooled.
And I do believe that.
I do too. And he does not claim to be better. He just is educating people from a very sociopathic space, what it is. And there's some people that have been diagnosed as sociopath and psychopath on social media that don't proclaim healed. But they can educate you in a very logical way.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, is they don't profess to be healed or healing. It's the ones that claim to be the good guy or the good girl now who, have changed their ways. I'm like, well, either you...
I've never seen them. So I'm so glad that I've never seen them. You know what I do with those people? I really feel like my energy is mine to protect.
Yeah, sacred.
Even on social media, if you're going to come at me because this video that's 1 minute long didn't address a daughter-in-law and it only addressed a mother-in-law, then, I don't know what to tell you. Logically, that's not the topic of this fucking video.
Yeah. Oh, I love you. I love you.
It doesn't mean that your side doesn't exist. It's a 1 minute video. I don't know what you expect from me.
The expectation for free information, the expectation is, well, that's not what I experienced. Well, that's great. As I say in the rules of my page.
I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Block.
Yeah.
Bye.
I have no time for that.
If you're that ignorant to think that a 1 minute video, I just say either that's not the topic. I'm sure it can happen both ways.
Yep.
It's not the topic of this video. I don't know what to tell you. So if they respond back and they get catty, I'm like, bye. So, listen, I heard a quote, I think Taylor Swift said it, that her energy is expensive and not everybody can afford it, right?
I love that.
Yes, Taylor Swift. That is such a great quote. And I don't spend time there with fakies. I think our bodies know anyway when someone is just really off.
Especially if you've gone through it and you're healing, because I also don't think that healing is a destination, it's a journey, right? So we're constantly healing. So if you're doing the work, you can start to see whose energy is authentic and whose is not authentic, who is there to supersize your life and who's there to strip your life.
One thing I would encourage, because we need to close down here soon, but there is of course I'm going to bring up murder because I'm just obsessed with law and crime. It's that.
Me too.
But Brian Koberger did a massive murder out here in the United States. He slaughtered 4 college students. And Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana, I always want to make sure I mention their names as well. But Kaylee's sister, at the sentencing, stalked the stalker. And for the first time in my life, I saw her humiliate a sociopath. And she got him. She was, I have to send it to you. She was so logical. She used his own questionnaire as he was getting a PhD in criminology. He used his own questionnaire against him in her statement. And I have had so many battered women that I treat, whether psychologically or physically, watch that. And I have one, she goes, I have watched it at least 20 times. Somehow what she did was she took his ego that's up here and slowly got down to every insecurity that makes him have that. I've never, ever, ever, ever from any lawyer, any expert, anything, see something so clear
and clever
and clever and empowering.
Yeah.
Because she breaks him down to the fragile ego that he really is. And she got him.
And that is a win for one is a win for every person who's experienced.
And that's why I want people to have examples. when you feel powerless, we're never going to have the opportunity. Brian cannot talk back in that opportunity. We won't get that. But if you understand your partner the way that she chose to really educate herself and understand her defendant, the defendant, I don't want to even say his name. It was so empowering to anyone, male or female, that is on the other side. And one thing she said is when she was speaking to him, she said, because she comes from a very healthy family. So I'm going to say that even healthy people, she said, my body, she goes, I wasn't scared of him that day. I wasn't intimidated by him, but my body, something primal in me was like, run. He's dangerous. I just think that the more you can educate, and even having visuals, that the brain loves pictures and videos. And so I'm going to send you, I'll have to send it to you
do.
on Instagram or email. But anyone, Olivia Gonzalez, watch her closing statement. If you are feeling disempowered, if you are feeling like no one really sees these people, just watch her, because we all do see it, but the way she put it together, like wrapped it up in a bow, and it was like, ah. So it's really, really good. And I think it's empowering to watch. Yep, it's empowering. I'm encouraging anyone who's been in that position to watch it. You can see your parents in that person. You can see your spouse, whatever. What would you leave people with? It feels like such a hopeless space in terms of the law, right? And your job is to settle them out and give them hope. So let's leave our listeners with something really inspiring.
So
no pressure.
It's no pressure. 3-second soundbite, Chantal, and you're going to turn everybody into a positive Patty.
Let's do a sizzle.
So here's the thing. It's very easy to feel helpless, hopeless, and powerless when you're up against a person who has no good in them. Truthfully, they don't. They have no problem hurting you and hurting your children to hurt you. But you actually do have a lot of power to positively impact your children, even if at this particular stage in your life, you don't have a relationship with your children because they've been turned against you. There's so much that you can do still from parenting from afar to positively impact your children. And you are just as powerful as your narcissistic ex. You just don't think that you are. They've had a lifetime to learn how to manipulate. You're at a disadvantage that way because you haven't learned how to counter this. But there's so much that you can do during your time, not only for yourself, but also to help your children navigate this chaos and confusion with far more confidence and clarity. Don't ever underestimate how powerful you are as a protective parent.
Oh, I love it. We're going to end that. That is so incredible. Everything about Chantal will be in our show notes. You'll know how to, I hope you get a ton of clients from this. I'm sure that you will. I have a wonderful, beautiful following of people. I am so lucky.
Well, I've been following you for a long time, and this is how I connected. And I love what you do and how you talk about your own story, and also your wit and your humor, because you're just like me. Humor has gotten me out of dark spots. And if
it has to be funny.
Yeah,
it just
right.
has to
Or
be
I'd be
funny.
crying all the time. I'd be so right, and I do cry, but I also do laugh and at the absurdity of it, even when it's hard. I'm like,
find yourself funny. Like, just find yourself funny. Like, it's okay, right? Life is too short to not laugh. And I know they seem all powerful in certain times, and so often they really are. But that doesn't mean you don't have your own power. And learning to, and just listen to Olivia, because she's like, she goes through all these things and then she says, subtext for all of those things is that you're a wannabe. I was like, oh, girl, that's a good word. Like, just great. And it's empowering, and you do have more power than you think. And I really want everyone
will never experience happiness. Right? They live their lives in a constant state of seeking out happiness, and it always evades them. So despite what they do to you, you have the capacity to find happiness despite what they do or don't do. And this is
actually, Olivia says that. So it's like, I don't know. For me, I'm not sure if they want happiness or just power, and they might confuse those two.
I think they conflate them.
Yeah, because I think that they don't value love and those things. They just want to see, they're so hungry for power.
Because they're so empty inside.
Now they're like vampires. They live parasitic lives, essentially. Right? They just find a host and they suck it dry. So the less fuel, the less blood you give them, the better. But Chantal, you're so needed. You're so needed. I think so many people listening are going to need someone like you. They don't know that people like you exist. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for showing up in the scary space of law. Thank you, thank you, thank you for helping to want to save and rescue children. We should all be a lot more angry that children are being abused. And just your voice, your purpose, you're such an angel. So just thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for what you do in this world. We need more positive change in the family court system. So guys, if you want more, let me know. We can have her on again. But everything that you need will be in the show notes. And if you need her, contact her. And that is our therapy session for the day. And I love all of you. And until next week, be well and take care of you. Well, Bravehearts, that concludes our amazing therapy session for the day. Please sign up on my email list at drsherrycampbell.com so that you can be in touch with me and see what's going on in terms of what I'm offering soon, what books are coming out, etc. Talk to you in a couple of weeks.